Good afternoon and welcome to this episode of Governance Headlines, a sister program to Governance Dialogues. My name is Elisa Cole and I'm the Managing Director of Governance Center, which is a think tank and advisory firm working on advancing corporate and economic governance priorities in developed and emerging markets. And in today's episode, I would like to speak to you about a recent development in Hong Kong, whereby directors pursuant to a recent proposal, will no longer be required to disclose their personal identification, such as their passport information or their address or other relevant details to the public investors or other observers of public markets. And of course, we've seen in recent media and commentary on this proposal a number of disappointed views, notably from the Asian Corporate Governance Association, but also other market participants in Asia, including auditors and other investors who have commented on the potential risks of this proposal for the transparency of the Hong Kong market. And in today's episode, I would like to come back specifically on this issue and the potential risks that this proposal, which effectively obfuscates or renders less transparent the identity of directors in the Hong Kong market, actually carries for the market going forward. There are a number of implications to this regulatory proposal. Of course, the ability of investors and companies to do due diligence on Hong Kong listed issuers will be impaired. Auditors have also warned about their ability to provide assurances to the quality of financial statements because obviously the board, and notably the board's audit committee, has an important role in not only appointing auditors but also verifying the quality of internal audit and other work within the company, and therefore having director identification is of course critical to that process. There are a number of other important facets that have perhaps not been pointed out in the public media, which is relating to conflicts of interest that directors often face. And indeed, in developed jurisdictions, it's often the case that directors not only disclose their potential and actual conflicts of interest when they assume their duties, but also on an ongoing basis. There are statements that are, for example, collected by corporate secretaries on a yearly basis that reflect any changes in their position. And that is, of course, essentially, or even more essential for independent directors who are supposed to have an independent view on the company's affairs. So all that to say that there are a number of important issues, and from a regulatory perspective, but also from an enforcement perspective, around how effectively investors will be able to enforce their duties when the identification of directors is obscured. And these are all important concerns, as I've highlighted for a number of reasons. But I think there is perhaps an even more important reason looming behind this conversation, and that is some of the tensions on which I've commented in the recent article in the Harvard Law School blog, which highlights the tension between American and Chinese capital markets and the passage of recent legislation under the Trump's presidency that would, in principle, allow the PCAOB, the American accounting regulator, to access audit papers of Chinese issuers listed in the United States markets. And that law essentially would require this to happen in 3 years' time, which means that we could also expect a movement of Chinese companies away from the US markets unless this particular issue is addressed, which has been a thorn in the capital market sort of discussion and a broader US-Chinese relationship for many years now. What is interesting in this move, this recent move by the Hong Kong market, is that this could happen in the context of Chinese companies actually perhaps exiting the American market and perhaps listing more in Hong Kong market, which is still has superior liquidity and interest by international investors. And all of that, I think, is also an interesting indication of global politics and how they affect capital markets development and the policy of regulators, which is something that we've discussed extensively on the program that I host, Governance Dialogues, where I've had conversations with the likes of Brian Starwalt, who's the CEO of the Dubai Financial Services Authority, the regulator of Dubai International Financial Center, of Marcelo Barbosa, who's the president of the Brazilian securities regulator, and Gabriela Figueiredo Dias, who's the chairwoman of the Portuguese securities regulator. And I invite you to have a look at these episodes for further understanding of how securities regulators are currently thinking of directors' duties, of defining directors' duties, of rendering them more transparent, and also therefore allowing shareholders to take more active action against any breaches of these duties. So that's my thoughts for today's episode of Governance Headlines on Hong Kong, but also broader implications for other markets. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you soon on next episode of Governance Headlines.